guys, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we are going to be making our October dish mat of the month. And I have designed it and put a pattern together for anyone wanting to make it. You know that I'm making these for myself and just sharing them because I know lots of you appreciate these dish mats. I don't write patterns, but I do give you all the cutting directions, and I do this tutorial because, again, I want to share these if you want to use them as well. Now, I have designed this and I've put it all out and did all of my cutting pieces and everything, but I have not made this yet, so this is going to be a first for me too, so hopefully everything is cut correctly. If there's any changes that need to be made, I'll make them right here, and then I'll correct this pattern, and you'll have the corrected pattern in the description box below this video. So I hope this works out. Like I always say, I have an image of what I want it to look like, and hopefully it looks the way I see it. And so what I did is I picked out 3 different colors for my pumpkins, and I decided to go with these kind of aqua and orange and kind of either a white or a print that's a light print like this. My fabrics that I used, let's see, I believe this is just, I don't have the color on this. It possibly could be like a snow or something like that. It's not white. It is a little bit creamier, but it's not a cream. It's not a cream. I think it goes really well with the fig tree fabric. So whichever she uses for her background, I believe is what this is. So I chose this as my large pumpkin because I just really love this pattern, and I have a little collection of all of this Halloween fabric of hers, and I thought that would be really pretty. And then because I really like the mint color or kind of the aqua, I thought this would go really well with it. And this is just an art gallery fabric that I had a fat quarter or something. I think I have more than a fat quarter of it that I just picked up at a quilt shop, and I thought these colors looked really good together. And then I have a little fat quarter of this, and this is another type of art gallery fabric that is not with this. It's not a companion in the same line of fabrics as this one, but it is a really pretty one, and it does coordinate very nicely. So I'm going to try these 3 fabrics. Now my concern is that this is going to be too light because of course this background is this, but I'm hoping it will show up just a little bit. And being able to see this on the camera right now helps me see it a little differently too. If it is, that's fine. Again, this is just for my kitchen and it's fine. I did not have a color that I felt was close to this that coordinated. I would have really liked this color right here, this little kind of a flesh tone color. It's kind of got a little orange to it, but I just didn't have anything in that color. So I thought, well, I'm gonna try like a white pumpkin with a little bit of color in it, and we'll just see how that goes. So I've got all of these cut, and I've got my letter tiles on them, or at least I did. And these little letter tiles are my pumpkin tiles that I shared with you if you saw the fat quarter reveal for September's box. And I shared a free download, and you can make these letter tiles if you would like to have this set. Just go to that video and look in the description box. So I've got all of my pieces cut and labeled, and this is cutting for the whole dish mat. It's not for each block. I thought I would originally thought, well, I'll just piece it for each block, and it was just too long of a pattern that way. And so I thought I'm just going to piece it for the whole dish mat. And so here we have our cutting instructions. And if you're not familiar with my cutting instructions, I have what the fabric is. Like this is for the pumpkins. If you want all of yours the same color, that's fine, or whichever 3 colors you need. And there's just one fabric for each of those cuts. Then I have the stems. I'm going to use the same fabric for all of my stems. And again, it's another art gallery fabric. And it is this kind of a chestnutty brown. It matched this brown right here, so I thought I'll use that. Then we have our background, and again, I'm just using this one. And like I say, it's just a basic fabric. And then I have something I didn't know what to call it. I call it a tabletop. And it's basically whatever those pumpkins are sitting on. I had thought about just having them floating, but then I didn't really care for that. So I've got it colored in this right here, but I'm thinking that I will probably make it the same color as my stems. And again, I have a couple of strips on the outside here, and I'll just decide what I want to use for those outside strips. And then this last piece here is just the border, so you can see what it looks like with a border. Now, I don't have this last teal color labeled. That is just because I'm not sure what size cut you're going to need for that. It all depends on how much room you have left on your dish mat to cover. And so that'll just be whatever it is that your dish mat needs, and you can easily cut that, and I'll show you when we get to that point. But so here is the diagram. Here are the cutting directions. Mine are all cut up. Here is the dish mat that I'm going to be using, and this is one from Hobby Lobby, and I have found that Hobby Lobby really has the cheapest ones, and I like their size. Their size is 14 inches by 21 inches, and it just works very easily for the patterns that I like to design. Now, you can use any size that you want as long as it is tall enough for the pumpkins and it's wide enough for the pumpkins. You might have no room for this outside trim, and that's fine. If you have a longer one, you just add more strips. That would work just great. If it's a shorter one, you just leave off strips. So it can be used as long as it can cover these 3 blocks. You can use whatever size you want. This one is also nice because they have 40% off on fall, and that's usually what their price is. I imagine they'll be doing 50% off before too long. And at the end of the season, when they're trying to clearance things out, they go for dirt cheap. So keep your eye out for them at that time. A lot of times 60, 70, 90% off, and if they have any left at that time, that's a great time to grab them. So these are, $3 and something each at this point, and really that is cheaper than you could buy the backing fabric and the stuff that's inside. The foam interfacing, which is probably like a Bosal, or there's another one too, that would be more expensive if you just bought a piece of it than this whole mat is. So this is a great thing to use. And people ask, why are you just not putting that on batting or using your own foam interfacing? And the reason is it's cheaper this way. But definitely if you don't have one, you just make your own sandwich with either interfacing towels, the Bosal foam, whatever you have, and you can easily just make it with the things you have around the house. Just cut it to the size you want and you're good. So on this one, since this is such a cute design, I'm going to use this and keep this as the background, as the backing of it. And I am going to be using, and I believe it's orange. Yeah, my orange background as the side that I am going to be putting my fabrics on. Now, anytime you have a dark fabric and a light fabric on top of it, you are going to see through it. And it's okay because orange coordinates with what I'm doing. So if it has a bit of an orange tone to it, I am okay with it. But if you don't like that your dish mat is coming through your light colored fabrics, you can certainly add another piece of fabric. Just cover it with another piece of fabric, like a white or whatever color you choose, and then have, you know, that extra layer. That's fine too. But I don't mind having a little tinge of orange in my colors, and it might not even show up. It depends on the thickness of your fabric too. So right now I'm going to set this mat aside because we're not at the point of using that. And as you know, most of my mats have, I think all of them have the Quilt-As-You-Go technique in the pattern, and some of them are a lot of piecing ahead and then putting it on with Quilt-As-You-Go strips. So that's what this one is as well. So I'm going to set this aside so it's right next to me, and then I'm going to bring you back and we're going to get started. All right, I think I have everything laid out here. Now, I am going to be piecing this a little differently than just doing each block individually. I think this will go a lot quicker. You can certainly do each block, piece it, sew it, put it on, do another block, piece it, sew it, put it on, and so forth. But I'm going to try to put all the blocks together and kind of do them all at the same time, especially when we're doing the same technique. And so since all of these pumpkins are snowballed with the K fabric, I'm just going to go ahead and snowball all 4 corners of all 4 of my cuts right now and get that out of the way. So in order to do that, and I'm just going to show you, let's see, that's kind of light. Let me show you on this darker one. I'll show you on this one, and then we'll just do all of them off screen. And I'm going to give this a press. All right, so I've got it all pressed. Now you can certainly take your fabric and starch it before you cut. I did not for this one. We have a few small pieces, but they're not real small, so I don't feel like I need to starch it. It makes it a lot easier to sew. So if you really like to have accurate seams and accurate piecing, I recommend starching, and that means you starch the fabric before you cut it. So I've got my first pumpkin piece right here, and this one is tall, so we have the rectangle going this direction. And remember, if you have a fabric that has directionality, like this one does, you need to make sure it's going the right way. Now, when you snowball these, it does not matter, but once you place it onto your quilt, that's when you want to make sure it is going the right direction. So for each of these pieces, we are going to take a K block and we are going to place them right on top of the fabric. If you have a fabric that has a right side and a wrong side, it's right sides together. And of course, basic fabric that's solids does not have a right and a wrong. If it is like a grunge or something like that, it does have a right or a wrong, but just a solid fabric does not have a right or a wrong side. So once you have them placed, you can either take a glue stick like this, and you can put a little bit of glue in that outside corner because that is going to be cut off. And that can be used to hold your block in place. Now, if I want to, I can just take this and I can hit it with a little heat and that will dry quickly. I can also take, let me find my pins here. I can also take, oops, let me find a small one. There's one. I can also take a small pin and I can put it somewhere where I know I'm not going to be running over it. I can put one here and one up here. And that way when I sew, it's out of my way. So I can put pins on it. If you are a person who has been quilting and sewing for a long time, you may not need to put any pins in it. You may feel comfortable without pins. I usually don't do pins for this small of a piece, but it does help if you're wanting to be very accurate. Now, once you've figured out how you want to attach those before you sew, you're going to take a fabric pencil or pin, and this is just a friction pin which will come off with heat. You can just take a pencil too and just do it lightly because the lead won't show through after you've drawn it. It's going to be where your seam is and you're going to flip it, so it's going to be on the other side. But anything darker or a marker that would bleed, do not use for this, because that you will see in your seam line. So you can go around and just make your diagonal seam lines with this. Now, if you have diagonal seam tape on the bed of your sewing machine, you don't even have to do this. And some people are very comfortable in just sewing this and eyeballing it. And so you decide what you want to do here. But again, I'll just put these on here because everybody can find a straight edge and everybody can find a pencil. So we know this is going to work for everybody. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with these two blocks right here. And I'm going to take all of them together to my sewing machine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the entire block at one time. So I'll start on one side, stitch right on that line, pick up my presser foot, give myself a little extra thread, come over here and sew, pick up my presser foot, and just go around like that without cutting thread. Then when I get to here, I'll pull my next piece in and do the same thing, and then I'll do my next piece. And I'll have all three blocks all snowballed, and I don't have to cut the thread until the very end, and that will go very quickly. So I'm gonna do that, and then I'll bring you back when I've got them all sewn. And here is my little fabric mess. We'll get that cleaned up real quickly. So just go through and cut all your threads. And I do want to also say, and it dawned on me when I was sewing these, because I realized I didn't have as many K blocks as I thought I needed, but in this pattern right here, I used I for the top two squares on this pumpkin, and they are a little bit smaller. And the reason I used a little bit smaller on here is because I wanted to keep this bottom nice and even, so I used the same size squares here. But when I used K here, it just kind of looked, this is too small of a piece to make it look as rounded as I would like. So I just made those a little bit smaller, and so just be aware of that when you're sewing your pumpkins, that you're gonna have two eyes, and so you only need, let's see, 10 of the K's, okay? Just something to remind you of. And sometimes I write these patterns and then it takes me a little bit to get to making them, and I forget what I do. Also, on the seam tape, here is what I use, and I think I've had this for 3 or 4 years now, and I use it all the time, but you don't need to use very much. It's just kind of a washi tape, and this is by Cluck Cluck Sew, and I'll put a link to it in the description box below. But you can use it for your diagonal seams or for sewing a 1/4 inch away on either side. So it's a handy tape to have. Some people just like to use a permanent marker and just draw a straight line on their sewing bed, and that works too. And you can take it off with alcohol. You might test it first, and I don't know, after a while, if it's been there for years, it probably will stain through to the plastic, but if it's just being used temporarily, it should come off with alcohol. But if it's something that you use all the time, you know, there's no reason you need to take it off. So that is just something that you can be aware of. And there's a lot of people, a lot of stores and shops that have other things, little plates that you put on the bottom of your bed, and it has a lot of lines and stuff that help you sew straight diagonals. So just things to look forward to, but that tape is just a real simple one. So let me get these trimmed up, and I'm going to show you what they look like here. And hopefully I have decent diagonal stitches. So what we're going to do is, let's just do this one here. We're going to take these and we're going to flip them back, and they should cover that back fabric right here. And remember, we glued, or you could have glued right here, and that was fine because we are now going to trim that 1/4 inch away from that edge. and then we're just going to press it back. And I believe, let me look at my pattern here. Yeah, I think we can just press all of them toward the corner. And so I'm going to do that with all of them, and then I'll bring you right back. All right, I have all of the corners pressed out, and I have trimmed off the backs, except for this one right here. Like I told you, sometimes my plans or what I think it's going to look like do not actually work out, and here is one of them. I don't like this block because I cannot see the shape of it. It blends in too much with this white and it's lost. So this one is not going to be, this fabric is not going to be used. And so I glanced around. What I had on my cutting table was this really cute one right here, and it is my acorn hollow line that I'm using right now in some projects, and it just happened to be sitting there, and I thought that works perfect. I also had the pink grunge that goes with that charm pack also, but I want something with a pattern. I think this is just too plain. It has a nice orange in there, and it has some darker colors. I like the color with it. The color goes fine, but this one looks really good. In fact, if you look at it carefully, you can see that it's got the kind of the same orange. It's a little more gold, but very close. It goes perfectly with these colors here. This is a little bit more flesh tone, but I think this is gonna work. And actually this right here will kind of go with my stems too. So it's another floral, and I think that's going to work and look good. So like I said, sometimes things don't come out like I envision them. And if that's the case, just make a different plan and keep going. So we just swapped those two fabrics and we are still doing fine. So this is what we have so far. And right now I am going to set these 3 snowballed pumpkins aside. And we are going to look and see what else we're going to be making several things of. And that would be these stem units. And these are really cute, fun stems to make. We need piece Q, E, R, and D. So let me grab those. Okay, here we have them right here. Now, I have right here a Q and an E, and I don't think you can see that there. Let me see if I can bring it closer. So I have a Q and an E right there. Now in my cutting directions, and this one, yes, I do have it. I have an asterisk by Q and I have an asterisk by E. And down here it says, assemble as 2 at a time, half square triangles, and trim to 1.5 inch square. So what we're going to do is for each of these pumpkins, and actually we're not going to need all these pieces because we're going to get 2 stem pieces from each of these pairs of squares. So we're actually only going to need to do 2 of these. You're going to have an extra square. I'm going to leave that in the cuts just because some people may not realize that they can use the other half while they're making this, and they'll need to cut an extra one. But we can get by with just these 2. So I'm going to put these over here, and I'm going to put these over here. Okay, so what we're going to do, 2 at a time, half square triangles, is super simple. You just take a pin and a straight edge, and you go from corner to corner. Just stack them right sides together if there is a right and wrong side. Both of these are solids. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we are going to this time sew 1/4 inch away from that edge on this side and 1/4 inch away from the edge on the other side. And then we're going to cut them in half, and I'll show you how we trim them down. So I'm going to take both of these and sew on both sides. So I have both of these, and I think you can see my stitches better. Both of these with a seam line 1/4 inch away from that middle line. And what we're going to do is we are just going to cut directly on that line. And when we do, we are going to get 2 half square triangles from each block. So now we have 4, we only need 3, so one of these is going to be an extra. So there's my half square triangle right there. But they aren't the right size just yet because I oversized the square, so you didn't have to be perfect. Now there's a couple of different ways to trim these down, and I'm going to show you my favorite first. My favorite way is using this ruler right here, and this is a Quilt in a Day 6.5 inch square up ruler right there. And it can make half square triangles from, gosh, really, you can make them really super tiny. Not that you would ever need that tiny, but basically any size, the smallest you could think of, up to 6.5 inches. So this makes a nice ruler to have on hand because I really don't make half square triangles any bigger than 6.5 inches. And if I do, it's just as easy really for me to sew 2 triangles together and not have to trim them down. And also using just a square up ruler to do it is fine too. But this is a great one. Now I noticed that they have several versions of this one out now. And there's one that's bigger and there's one that's smaller. There's also some that have the little nicks in them where you can cut off the dog ears that are on your half square triangles when you're finished. And that is these little guys right here. And you can trim those off with the ruler because they have some cuts in them. So this one I've had for a long time and I use it all the time for my half square triangles and it works just great. All you do, let me move this out of the way here. All you do is take your triangle and you do this before you press open. I see my seam allowance is right, or my seam is right here. And I need to turn these into 1.5 inch. It says right here, trim to 1.5 inch square. And so I will put that seam right on the 1.5 inch line. I think you can see a little better there. So right there. And then when I do that, I can kind of scoot it over because I want to take a little off of both sides. Now I haven't made these super big, but they are big enough to trim off any extra stuff. So I can just take my rotary cutter and on both sides, you're gonna get just a little bit of waste right there. And that's all you're gonna have, okay? Now, if you had a really nice straight edge on one side, you could just scoot it all the way over to that nice edge and then trim off one side. That works too, but I like to get both sides nicely trimmed. Now, what I do is I just take my rotary cutter and cut at an angle like that, but I just make sure I don't cut my seam, and that takes off those dog ears. So that one is ready to go. Now, if you don't have this ruler, and I'll link in the description box, I'll leave a link to those if you're interested in getting one. So another way of doing it is going ahead and pressing it open. So let me go ahead and I'm going to press this real quick. Okay, I've got it nicely pressed open. Now we can take any ruler that is larger than the cut we need. We need a 1.5 inch cut. So basically any ruler I have is larger than a 1.5 inch cut. I also like to have a ruler that has a diagonal line on it. So let me just grab one. So I just grabbed a collection of rulers that would work. And I do have a 1.5 inch square I guess, ruler that was in the Fat Quarter Shop box. And so we always get some neat little notions, and this one I forgot I had. So this would definitely work. I just put the seam line right there on that diagonal line, and then I just center it so I can trim all of my edges, and it's just going to be a hair off, and then I could just go all the way around it. That would be easy. Or I can take, this one would work, it's got a diagonal line and it's bigger. Those lines, the orange lines or the yellow lines are a little bit bigger, and sometimes it can be a little harder to see. Here's a rectangular one that would work as long as it has, I would probably use this end, actually, yes, because there's the 1.5 inch, it's a creative grid one, and then there's a diagonal line right here, and then of course any square ruler that is larger than the block. So I'll just use this bigger one, because most of us, if we don't have one of these yet, we'll be getting one soon, because you will find that you do need a larger square ruler to help you out when you're trimming down blocks. So let me turn this so my diagonal line is going like this. I have my ones up here. I lay that directly on my seam line, and I've got a little bit hanging out over here and a little bit over here, but I still am okay on the 1.5 inch line, and I'm still okay over here. Now remember, we don't have much waste on this one, so it could be that you only have to cut 2 sides. I'm gonna go ahead and trim this and flip it over, and then we'll see if we can get more off. So these 2 had plenty. I'm gonna flip it over so that corner goes all the way down here. So the corner that was here is now here. Here's my straight edge, here's my straight edge. I will lay this right there on top, making sure my 1.5 inch lines right there and right there are lined up with those straight edges. And then I will just trim anything that comes off. And not much came off, just a couple of threads there. So there we have our perfect 1.5 inch half square triangle. And again, you don't have to strive for perfection, but something close is really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and do the rest. I need 3 of these. All right, I have all 3 of them trimmed up and pressed, and now we're ready for cuts D and R. And these are each little squares that are the same size, and all we are going to be doing is putting them together like this. So you just put right sides together if you have sides that need to be put together, and you're going to just sew a 1/4 inch away from one of those edges. Very simple. I'm going to do it for all 3 sets. And there we have all 3. I ended up just pressing toward the dark on all 3 of those. And one hint, since these are so small, when you are trying to keep hold of them and sending them through the sewing machine, I use a stiletto, and that works really nicely. That way your fingers don't have to get right in there. You can hold it on this side, but this side I keep steady with the stiletto. That is something that comes in real handy. And if you don't have a stiletto, your seam ripper works just fine. That's fine too. And that's that cute pink one from the Fat Quarter Shop box. I'll put a link to that in the description box below. I just love it. But that is how you get those through without them going crazy on you. So now we have these 2 pieces, and we're going to assemble them to make the stem. Now, as you can see in the pattern, I have 2 of them going this way and 1 going this way, but it is totally up to you which direction your stems go in. If you're planning on doing it this way, but then mess up and your stems are going the other way, put them in the way you've made them. Don't worry about this. I just randomly selected it. Don't worry at all. They could all go the same way if you want. So what we're going to do is we are going to lay, so for instance, if we want to make this one right here where it's going toward the left, we are going to lay the brown part of, or the stem portion of our block at the bottom, and the angle is going like this. We're going to be putting the stem portion at the top on this section, just like this. So when we sew them together, that is the way they are going to look. So I can piece these two, and I will put a pin in this one right here, just because sometimes when these are going through, the lower fabric feeds faster because of the feed dog. So I'm going to put one at the end. So I'll just do a 1/4 inch away from the edge. Now, if you want it to go the other way, this time you're going to be making it so your brown is at the bottom, but the diagonal is going the other direction. And your brown is still going to be at the top of this one. So that one will make the stem that's pointing to the right. So I've got one to the left, this one will go to the right, and I'll just follow these since this is the way I've got my pattern and it won't confuse anybody. So I need to make the diagonal like that and that. So I will put these together and bring you right back. And there are my stems all finished and completed. Now when you look at them right now, they look kind of funny. You see that? This looks kind of funny, and it's okay because we are going to be sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance right there. And so once it's sewn into our block, it will look correct, just like that. So don't be worried if yours looks like this. It is the correct way. When I pressed, I just pressed toward the 2 squares. You could press it the other way or you could press it open. It doesn't make that much difference. So I'm now gonna set these right here, and let's see what we wanna do now. So I think we're gonna start with this pumpkin right here, because the only thing we need to do is to put the sides on our stem and then attach it to the pumpkin. So let's do this one. So I need my pumpkin right here, and then I need L and M. Okay, so here is my M, and here is my L, and M is just a little bit bigger, okay? Because on this one, and I guess if you are making these, you do want them to go the same direction, but if you were to change the direction of the stem, I didn't think about this, because these pieces aren't the same. You will want to put, like if you wanted this one to face right, you would put the M over here and the L over here. So you'd keep the piece that's next to the bottom portion of the stem, and you'd keep the piece that's next to the top portion of the stem. I hope that makes sense. So if you change the direction, you also want to change the side pieces, okay? So I'm going to keep mine the way it is right there. And so my L is the smaller, my M is the larger. This goes right there. And what we're gonna do is just put right sides together. We're gonna stitch a 1/4 inch away here. Then once that's stitched, we'll bring this one over and put it right sides together, stitch a 1/4 inch away from the edge right there. And then I will press, I believe I'll press toward this background because there's no seams, and I'll bring you right back. And so here it is. I have it all pieced, and I just pressed toward the background. So this should line up right here, and it does. I'm going to put these right sides together, and I'm going to match up my ends. That's the important thing to do right here. Even if one is longer than the other, you want to match them up. Okay. So when I sew, let me look and see what we got. Mine matched up fine. If one was looser than the other, that looser one, the one that had the extra fabric, would go down, and that would touch, and that would be at your feed dogs, and those feed dogs would pull that fabric through, so you won't have any puckers or pleats. And I'm just going to put another one right here in the middle just to keep my edges even. And I'm going to sew this a 1/4 inch away from the edge. And there I have this pumpkin all finished. And remember, this is going to change once we have our piece of fabric that goes across the top, and it will look more like a stem. So here is a cute block, and you can use this for anything. You don't have to just use it for this dish mat. It's a nice tall pumpkin. So let's set this one aside, and we are going to do the same thing for our other ones. So let's take this one. We've got our stem, and I think mine's going this way, and I need piece I and J. And I is the smaller one, J is the larger one. Remember, if you decide to do a block that has a stem that has the other direction, you just need to swap out these two pieces and that will make it. But I am doing it this way, so I'm gonna follow the pattern. Okay, and the same thing, we're gonna sew both of these ends onto this stem. And there I have that one, and it is ready to go on. I am just going to put it like the other one, right sides together. And I notice this triangle hangs over just a little bit, so it's a little longer. In fact, I think I'm gonna trim that one. All you need to do is, this pink fabric right here is the line that I'm wanting to trim up to, and this piece up here, this pink up here, I want to also line it up with, because that is the fabric square that I want this block to measure. So I will probably end up having, if I can see that, there we go. I will probably end up having this a little smaller, but it's the top and it's not matching to anything, and it's okay. If I had, and it's just because I probably didn't have my snowballed corner sewn as exact as I could have. And if it were to be something that had to match up with the seam, I could redo it, or you can also match the seam to the edge, and just if there's any loose fabric on one side, that will go toward your feed dogs. You can make it work, but I think that will be fine. Now when I lay this on here, these match up just perfectly. I am going to put a pin on both ends, and just like the other one, I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch away from that top edge and attach my stem to my pumpkin. And there you have another cute pumpkin block that you can add to your toolbox in case you need a cute, oh, I think this is probably 4.5 by 5.5. 4.5 by 5.5. So if you need a cute pumpkin block, you can use this one for any project. Now remember, once we add our 1/4 inch seam allowance right here, this will fatten this bottom of the pumpkin up, and it will also fatten the sides up. So that'll make it look a little bit more proportionate. So there we have another pumpkin block, and we're ready for our final one. And as you know, you're getting really good at this by now. We need O and P. Okay, as I was going to find my O and my P, I realized that I had changed my pattern and I forgot to change this diagram. So over here, and it'll be all correct for you guys, I had an O originally, and it was the same size as this L, 1.5 by 3. So I had 2 cuts that were the same size, and you don't need that. You can just have the cut and label it with 1 letter. So I changed the L to having 2 of those, and I wanted to get rid of O. And I would have left O off and just had it there, but sometimes people kind of think, oh no, there's something missing. But I put a dashed line in it because I changed it, but I forgot to change it over here. And so now I need to take this O, it's no longer an O, it is an L, because this piece right here is the same size as this piece. So when you download your directions, you're gonna have it correct. I just need to do that. So I need piece L and piece, oops, I need to look at my diagram. I need piece L and piece P, and that's what I have right here. Okay, so L is the longer one, it goes here. P is the shorter one, it goes here. Again, if you had yours going the opposite way, flip those blocks and have them on the opposite sides. So now, of course, just join those two sides and sew a 1/4 inch away from each edge. I'll bring you right back. And that is sewn together. Press toward the background, piece it to the top of this, and sew a 1/4 inch away from the edge. And there we have another pumpkin block right there. So that is really cute. Let me back you up here. Okay, so we have our 3 blocks, but they're not the same size. So now we've got to add some fabric, and I've just laid them in order from short to tall. And you can take these blocks, and once we get the other piece up here so that they're all the same size, you can take these and you could make a really cute table runner just by changing the color of each block, mixing them up. You could have 2 of the same ones and just go as long as you want and put some kind of cute border or a piece border together, and you could make a really cute table runner with this. That would be a lot of fun. So if you like these blocks and want to put them to some other use and you don't have a need for a dish mat, or if you want to make both a dish mat and a runner, you could definitely do that. So let's put this one right here, and let's go ahead and get our pieces that will make these the right height. The small one, I need piece H, and the medium-sized one, I need piece N. So I am just going to lay the pieces right there, and they've gotten wrinkled since I've had them sitting for a little bit. And this one right here. So as you know, this is super simple. Right sides together, pin them so that they don't move. So a 1/4 inch away from both of them. And then I would press toward the background because there's no seams there. And I'll be right back. So there we have our nice, big, tall pumpkin blocks. Aren't they cute? I just love them. I love these colors right now. This is the colors that I love, and I think these just turned out so cute. I definitely am glad I changed that color. Okay, so there we have it. They all match the same height. These down here should match up too. If they're not exact, we'll fix that here in a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to be putting these on our dish mat, and we're going to do kind of that quilt-as-you-go method where we have one down and we put one on it, and so we have it quilted into the dish mat. And then we can also decide, is there any other quilting we want to do on these quilt blocks, and if there is, we can add that. So I'm going to get my dish mat and I will be right back. All right, so there's my dish mat, and like I said, you know, you could put your top on this, but I think this is really pretty, so I'm going to use it for the backing so it can be reversible. And so I'm going to be doing my Quilt-As-You-Go on this side. I do want to remove this tag, and I think I still have one of those little plastic things in there. I sure do. Those little things there. Okay, so let me just cut off this tag here. And I do want to put a tag on my dish mat. And so I just dug in and I found, this is backwards of course, I found this one, and I had given you some free ones, and this was one of those free ones. It says, be thankful, be grateful, and be respectful. So I thought that would be cute. The colors go with it and everything. And there's probably other ones in there that will go just fine too. I've been using quite a few of them, so this one is the one that from what I have left will be used. So I still need to iron it onto some ribbon, but I need to remember to put that on before I put my binding. Okay, so here we have this. We are going to find the center of this mat first. And to find the center, we're going to fold it in half. And you can use any kind of marking tool, anything that won't bleed through to your fabrics. And this is a erasable or a water erasable marker. And I'm just needing to put it here for a second. And then down here, right in the middle on that fold. Okay, and then I want to also find the middle going diagonally. So if you are familiar with the terms hot dog fold and hamburger fold, this is the hot dog fold. It makes it the long way, so you have a hot dog bun. My pen is losing its ink. Let me use my friction pen. There we go. Okay, so now when I open it up, and my fabric back here doesn't have any directionality there, so I've got my marks for the center. Now what I will do, I'll take my long ruler and I'm just going to draw a line right through there and a line right through here, and this will help us get it centered. There we go. Okay, this right here is the very center right there. Now we can take our blocks too, and I'm gonna fold them in half, and I am just going to very lightly mark them just in the seam line there. You can press them and you'll have the fold as your mark line too. That would be fine. That will help me lay this straight by laying it on the lines. And on this one, the middle block, I need to have the middle both ways, long ways and short ways. So hamburger fold. This is what teachers use for folding the construction paper when you're doing a project with the kids. They know exactly what I'm talking about. So for those of you that don't know, I'm a retired elementary teacher. And sometimes I may talk to you like you are 7 years old, and I apologize. I know my husband used to complain about that sometimes when we would be talking and I would be explaining how to do something. He's like, you know, I'm not 7 years old. And he was right. Just get used to doing it. Okay, so I've got my lines marked there. So this is the one I want to start with, and I'm going to go ahead and on my other small one do the same thing, just halfway across like that. But this is the one we're going to start with. So we're going to put it right in the center. So this is matching up down here. This is matching up up here, here, and here. I'm going to lay it out nice and flat, and I am going to pin it. Now, this is a pretty big piece. We don't usually have this big of pieces on our dish mats. We usually have smaller pieces, and this is a pretty big piece. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, and I was going to do this glue right here, but I know that this is going to get wet, and sometimes if you haven't washed the dish mat yet, that purple color will come back when it's wet. So I'm just going to use some regular Elmer's glue. Now, if you have glue basting spray, anything like that, you could do that. You could just pin it too, that's fine. But this, I notice, helps hold it, especially when we have big pieces. We've had smaller pieces and we haven't had a problem with it. But I am going to be quilting this with straight lines, and so I want to do this so that it doesn't pucker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this side down, pull this side back, and I am going to take school glue, not glue all, but Elmer's school glue. It's washable, no run. And I'm not going to put much on there, just a thin drizzle. That is a very small amount. I used to tell the kids that when they were gluing, they would be putting all this glue on it. And I would say, you know, you're not gluing a rock to paper, you're gluing paper to paper. You just need a little bit of glue. And so they thought that was funny. So a lot of them kind of realized, yeah, I kind of overdid it on that glue. You know, their paper's all warped up. Okay, so we got that one down. And then I'm going to go over here and do the same thing. And again, the opening here is letting very little glue through. I just need enough to let it stick just while I stitch it down and quilt it. But I want to make sure there's no pleats in it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it over to my iron, but I'm not going to hit my iron to my lines here because these are friction pin lines and they will go away with heat. I'm okay if these lines here on my pumpkin disappear because I'm done with them. But I'm just going to go ahead and hit this with some heat so that it takes that glue and dries it and it's down. Okay. Now some of you are like, oh, that's foam underneath there, it's going to melt. Well, I didn't just hold my iron on it for a long time. I just gently moved it around just to dry that glue and it's fine. I use these mats for pot holders and stuff too. I've never had a problem with it melting my Formica top or anything that was underneath the mat. It does work. It never seems to melt shut. Now I'm sure if you put something like a hot iron and left it sitting there for a while, it would melt and it would become probably crunchy. So this is cooled. I'm just going to kind of pull. So you see if I pull, whoops, I don't want to pull it too hard. It is sticking down, but it won't pull up my mat. My mat's too heavy. But this one right here is down. This one right here is down. I can put a little bit of glue right here and let it dry naturally. Just there. And this one I didn't get any glue right there. And if you see any other places that need to be glued, go ahead and do that. But just make sure everything's nice and flat. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is I want to go ahead and quilt this block before I put my other blocks on. And I think I am just going to do you can do different things, but since I'm going to be putting these other two blocks on too, I think I'm just going to do one that has the lines going this way. That way I don't have to worry about matching up over here. Now it is perfectly fine for you to have different quilting on different blocks, but it is trickier to do and make it look good. So I will take that line that I had originally, that center line, and line it up. I am going to make one line, and I have on my sewing machine a walking foot that I can use, and I can just go ahead and follow that line with the walking foot. It has a little bar on it. If you don't have that, you can also go ahead and put lines all the way across. Now there's different kinds of feet that will also measure these for you, and I think I have one. Let me look. Okay, I do have one, and I have never used this. I think I picked this up thinking, oh, what a cool idea. Let me get a piece of paper here. We'll just do this. Okay, this one is a regular plastic presser foot, and it's got little presser feet right here and right here that are plastic. And then it's got this plastic grid on it. And from the middle to this outside edge, let's see, middle to the outside edge, not the line, but the edge, it is 1 inch. So I could use something like this. Now I've never used this, and I'm wondering with this thickness if it would slip and slide some. I don't know. So that's an option too. Then I have, here's my walking foot, and here is the bar that I was telling you about right there, so that I can adjust it to whatever length I need and only draw one line. So I'm gonna go ahead and quilt this with 1 inch straight lines. I'll tell you when I get back what I decided to do. All right, I've got that all quilted down, and as you can see, it's just the lines. and it looks good. And I ended up using that foot and it worked perfectly. So that is one that is a nice one to use. Now I did increase my stitches, my stitch length, just because it will drag a little bit with this rougher fabric and the thickness, and so I made them bigger so it would pull it a little quicker, and that way it quilted just fine. And so I like this foot. I'm not sure what it's called. If I can find it, I will link it in the description box below. I believe I got it on Amazon. So I'm just going to leave that on and continue to sew with it because I can use it as my piecing foot too right now. Now, as I was quilting this, something dawned on me, and you're going to see what. Put this one here and put this one here. What do you notice? It's not going to be centered because the middle of this block is not the center of these 3-pieced blocks, and I just wasn't thinking. Now, if I wanted it to look better, you know, because I've already got this one on, I'm not going to take this one off. I could go and make a little bit smaller block, or I could make 2 of them that match this one. But I am going to go ahead and go with the flow. I may do a little adding on to this just to make it so it's balanced. We'll just see what happens. If nothing else, I'll just add my fabric because we are going to be adding some fabric, and there will be a little bit of space here once I get my 1/4 inch seam allowance here. And I could even make it a little bigger seam allowance to scoot it over a little more, but we'll make it work. So on yours, when you're making yours, don't use the center block as the center of your mat. It looks like it would probably be, you know, what we could do is we could lay these out. You could measure the length and then find the middle point right here. But I think it's probably right here next to the base of this stem. So somewhere in here, you could lay all your blocks out and then say, yeah, that looks good, you know, before you stitch it in place. But don't center this one if you want to have equal sides on your mat. So we'll figure this out. You'll just see another way of making something that's wrong go right. We'll do this one next. This is a good one. In fact, we're going to have a little more room over here. So we're going to go right sides together. And if you needed to straighten your blocks up, you could have straightened them up, just barely trimming off anything that you had there. You don't want to trim too much off because you want to make sure that these match up. Those seams match up. Those are the only seams that we're going to worry about on this one. And so I am just going to look right here, and it looks like the seams meet right there. So I can easily just put a pin here and then over here. Now, another thing you could do, since we're already quilting this, you could go ahead and put all 3 blocks together. So the 3 blocks together and then center them. So that's an option too. If you don't want to quilt in between the blocks like this, you'll want to probably do each one individually so that they are Quilt-As-You-Go blocks. And I'm just trying to get this edge right here even with this, and I think because of the quilting it pulled it in just a little bit, so I'm just matching that up. And this one's out a little bit. Now I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch, or you could do a little more, away from this edge. All right, so I have that one all sewn down, and let's put a little glue on it. Get the glue down there. So this bottle of glue is vintage glue. if you notice, the front of it has the letters L and H, and I think I've pointed this out in another video. This would have been my son Landon's school glue. So it has been around for a while. He is now out of college and working as an engineer, and it's been quite some time that this glue has been sitting on a shelf in our house. There we go. And I can give a little heat to that and it'll be set. And that looks good. Okay, so I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and I'm going to continue doing the 1-inch spaced lines and trying to keep them parallel with this one. And there we have this one all quilted in. Now you don't have to make your quilt lines even. You can do different thicknesses. That would be fine. There's no laws on how thick you have to have your spacing between quilting lines. So I've done it where, you know, maybe one is 1 inch, maybe the next is a 1/2 inch, then maybe 2, 1/2, 2, and just kind of have the same 3 or 4 measurements, and it looks really cute that way too. So just to let you know, if you want to space yours in all different spacings, that's fine. All right, now we've got to face this. Let's see what we've got. So I'm going to go ahead and attach it, and I think I am going to be bringing it over a little more. I think I'm going to have about a 1/2 inch seam allowance here. That way I'll have a little bit more room over here, and then we'll see what we're going to do after that. So matching up this seam right here. And if you want to flip this one back so that it nests, you can do that. But right now they're all going this way. And it's fine, it just doesn't lay as flat. But this is not a quilt, this is a dish mat, so it's okay to be a little thicker. Match this point up here. And then match that middle. Hitting the mat underneath there. Okay, now I'm going to go and I'm going to do a 1/2 inch here. Now it may make it look a little different on this side, but it's okay. No one's going to look at it that close. All right, I have that one on and I just pressed it back. And so right now I have about this much room. So what I am thinking that on mine, since I goofed, I could add a piece here, but I'm going to use this backing right here and it'll look funny on the back. I could take another one of my mats, add it, the same pattern, add it to it, but I'm not going to waste another dish mat for this. I am going to go ahead and quilt this on, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to trim however much I need off, so that I have the same amount of placemat showing on both sides. So I'm just going to trim this off over here. Now, there are lots of options that you could do. I could have redone this block to make it the same height, but I could have made it thinner and then scooted everything over. I could have redone this block and made it fatter and keep it the same height, but just fatter, you know, the same size as this one. But I didn't want to do that. I've already got these pretty blocks. I'm using them. And if my mat needs to be an inch smaller on this side, I can handle that. That would be no problem. But I just hate it that I did it so that you don't get to see what we would be adding if we added 2 borders, because it looks like we're only going to be getting to add this white border here on each side, because I wanted these sides of the pumpkins to pop out. But we will be adding something up here and down here. We'll get 2 pieces still there. So let me go ahead and get this one quilted on. I'll put the glue on like I did a while ago, quilt it on, and then I'll bring you back and we'll see what we've got and trim this one up. And I've got this one all quilted down, and you can see right now we have about this much space left, and so this is substantially more, and I think it may look crooked. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't look crooked if we'll see. Okay, I'm gonna put the side pieces on. I'm going to put those on, and then I'll put one solid piece here and then one solid piece, the brown here, so that the table goes all the way off to the edges. I think that will look good. So I will change this diagram, but remember on yours, if you want to have different colors back there, you can certainly do that. But I think it will look better if my pumpkins are just kind of highlighted like that. So let me go ahead and get my side piece here, and here it is. And this is really close. I think it will work. I need a 1/2 inch. It looks like a 1/2 inch there. So I think I can use this piece here. What you'll need to do and what I'll change in my directions is for this piece to be big enough if you had put this in here correctly. So it'll be big enough if you had centered it. You probably want to wait to cut your trim pieces out here and then just cut them to size as you need them, because everybody's dish mat is different. So, and even these don't always measure the same. They're pretty rough cut. So let's see here. I'm gonna go ahead and sew this one on. I think it'll work. Let me do that, and then I'll make probably another one that's this size. I've got another one that is this size, and put it here. And then I'll trim it off at that point. Okay. All right, I've got this one pushed over. It did work. It's a little tiny bit showing here, but that's fine because my binding is going to cover that. If you do cut your own, just cut them a little extra wide because you can always trim them off. But this will work because the binding will cover that. So now I'm going to go over here and with the same size piece, put it over here. Okay, I've got this piece right here on, and I gave it a nice press so I know it's nice and flat and not puckered. Now I just need to get a straight edge. And I am going to trim off this excess. And I'm really looking right here because this needs to be square. And that looks good. That looks good. That looks good. Okay. Voila. Problem solved. Now it is centered. And again, it doesn't have to be centered, but I kind of like it that way. Okay, now we're going to add a brown piece right here for our table. And let's see, this measures on mine is 2 inches. This over here is a little thicker, but these two hang over. So let's see, I'm gonna do 2.5 inches. I'm gonna do 2 3/4 inches because I'm good at letting it hang over farther. So on mine, 2 3/4 inches. I could do 3, I just have more to cut off. So 2 3/4 inches of the stem color, and that will be my table. All right, here is my piece of fabric right here. I am going to line up, and I'm just gonna let it hang over. It is fine. That will just get trimmed off. make sure the edges of the pumpkin block and the edges of your strip are lined up so that you don't keep from catching both pieces of fabric in your 1/4 inch seam. And we're going to just sew about a 1/4 inch away from that edge. And it covers it just fine with a little extra. And I'll give that a press in just a second. Now I'm going to go up here and I am going to do the same thing with a cream colored fabric, or if you want more color on yours, you can do the same color as you did there over here. You could have used this like a fabric that you like that coordinated with it and put it here. I'm going to go ahead and use background on mine, and then I'm going to pick a really pretty binding to kind of pull in all those colors. I haven't found anything yet. I haven't looked yet, so we'll see what I come up with. But I'm going to go ahead and sew a piece right here. This measures on my mat, it measures about 1.5 inches. So I think I'll probably do about 2.5 inches or so. That would include the seam allowance, and then let a little bit hang over. Again, yours might be different. And here is my piece. I made it longer so that it can hang over a little bit. Right sides together. Place that right there. Put a couple pins in it and make sure that you've got this piece over here pulled all the way over. And I will sew a 1/4 inch away from this edge. And that looks good. It covered it up nicely. And so here's what I have right now. So what I am thinking I am going to do, I think I am going to go and put a little Elmer's glue under this and under this. And I am going to do a seam that's right about 1/4 inch away from the seam I just sewed here, and a 1/4 inch this way on this one. And then I may do, let's see, 1 stitch in the middle. And that way it is, it kind of goes along with the quilting here, and that looks nice. I will probably also just go ahead and put a stitch 1 inch away from that seam, and that will also hold that down, so when I do my border it will be in place. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll show you what I have. All right, let's see what I've done here. So I've taken and stitched a 1/4 inch below that seam line right there. Then I split the difference between that stitch and the edge, and I just sewed right in the middle for another quilting stitch. And then I just stitched really, really close to the edge of my mat, and that is just a seam to hold down so that when I put my binding on, my front piece won't flip up, because I will be attaching my binding onto the back and then pulling it forward. So I don't want to be surprised in a bad way and flip my mat over and find that some of my fabric flipped out on me. So I attached it, and you can use a basting stitch too if you need to get it a little farther out, and then you can take that stitch out. But I just did it within that 1/4 inch seam allowance. I did the same thing on both sides here too, so those won't flip back. And then I did the same thing that I did down here, 1/4 inch above that seam, and then split the difference. And then the lighting is a little different there, so I do have another seam right here on the edge of my mat. I did change my thread for this piece down here because I thought white would just show up too much, and I didn't want it to be something that would catch my eye and divert from all the other stuff that's going on. These worked fine with the white because there's enough white in the prints that it is fine, but I thought I'll just try to make it closer to the same color down here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to flip this over, and you can see that the quilting on the back looks really nice too. Might have a few threads on there that I still need to trim. Yep, right here. And I'll get those here in a minute. But now we need to trim off all that extra fabric that is on the edges. So I'm just going to take my straight edge ruler, and it's a little trickier to see up there. Okay. And if you trim off some of your mat, that's okay. It's all covered up in the binding. So let's just trim that fabric off. There's that piece. I don't really have any on the sides except for at the top and bottom where those strips went across. So I will take that off and that off. This piece will come off. And there's some of the fluff from the mat, which is fine. And sometimes with the thickness of the mat, you need to push on your ruler a little bit so that your rotary cutter can cut it. Also, getting the larger blade rotary cutter helps for these thicker projects. Okay, so now we have it ready to bind. So now if you don't know how to bind, oops, I got all that fuzz on there now. If you don't know how to bind a quilt or a dish mat, I have a video that is a great machine binding video that shows you how to do a little mat like this really quickly. And so I'm going to put a link in the description box so that you can go watch that, so I don't have to do the tutorial right here for you. It'll keep this video a little shorter. And before I put this binding on, I need to make sure I get my tag, because this is the time you put your tag on. And since I'm going to be putting my tag in the back, let me see, I still need to put it on some ribbon, but we'll just pretend that this is the finished tag. And I will find the location. This is the right side up here, and depending on the direction of my tag, mine goes like this, so I really don't want it that way. I'll be putting mine right over here, and I will put that in and put my binding over it and then stitch it in with my binding. So that's where my tag is going to go. You don't need a tag, but they're awfully fun to use. And if you want to find these tags, I'll put a link in the description box below. All right, so I will bring you back when I have gotten this all finished, and I need to find a pretty binding fabric that kind of brings it all together. I really like it right now. I'd like to have something just to give it a little bit of pop now, and I think I should be able to find that. So I'll bring you back when it's all done. And there it is, all finished, and I did remember to get my tag on it. So I was happy about that. And the fabric that I used for my binding had kind of a pinkish brown background, and then there's little orange flowers, and then there's some little flowers that have just a tinge of blue or turquoise. It's hard to see on the camera. Don't know how clearly that is showing the true colors, but I thought that coordinated well with all the colors that I used and kind of helped bring it all together. But I'm very happy with it. I think I really like the colors, and I think it's going to be very pretty in my kitchen. Now remember, mine is a little shorter than what yours will be if you use a Hobby Lobby mat. And you could definitely add a border out here if you want, or you can trim yours down like I trimmed mine down. But you could also put a border up here too. You could do the same border that you put here, down here, and that might make it have even more color in it as well. I think it would look really pretty with a background that has a little bit of texture going on in it. I just didn't have anything that was a small enough print that had the right colors in it, but a background would be really pretty if it had some different little dots or something like that too. But I think this turned out really cute the way it is, and I am excited to get it in my kitchen, and I hope that you like it too. So if you are new to my channel and you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. I would really appreciate that. We are just about at 25,000 subscribers, and I'm so excited about that. There's a lot of freebies and things on my channel, so you can go back and look at different videos and see the free patterns and the free letter tiles, other little freebies here and there, worksheets and stuff. But I really enjoy sharing these with you, and I hope you enjoy making them yourself. So until next week, I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here soon. Bye-bye.